GameCast gang, welcome back to another tinkering video with Sully, and not only today are we going to be putting together a Game Boy Pocket from scratch, but we're also here to answer a very specific question. Can a modding novice like myself put together or install a backlight kit? Now, for those of you that owned the Game Boy Pocket, or the Game Boy Color will know just how bad these screens can be. Unless you're in the ideal environment, that meaning very adequate overhead lighting, chances are you're not seeing very much on that screen whatsoever. And that's when you see these classic pictures of people using worm lights and stuff shining down onto those Game Boy screens so they can actually see what they're playing. So the specific question we're going to answer today is, can I, a novice, a very inexperienced modding novice, install the Backlight kit, which is known to be one of the tougher mods to install? Before we jump into this video though, I just want to make it clear that this is not a tutorial. This is a highlight reel of sorts, and me sharing my experience of what this kit was like to install. Now, I will be as detailed and specific as possible, and I want to share with you all of the hiccups and issues I had along the way. So with that said, let's get into the video. Going into this build, we have one aftermarket Game Boy case with buttons, stickers, membranes, and screws, Game Boy motherboard, and of course a Game Boy LCD. And the reason we're here, the backlight kits for the LCD. You'll also need a screwdriver with the correct bits, some electrical tape, some double-sided tape, and yes, we need that Q-tip that snuck in as well. That will be used with the rubbing alcohol that we're going to use for some cleaning purposes, a soldering iron, yes, that is a wireless soldering iron, and a blade. And lastly, a polishing cloth. To begin this build though, we're actually going to put our attention and focus into the LCD screen itself. That is where most of the legwork has to happen for this build. We have to prepare that screen for the backlight kit, so we're going to start there. So let's get into it. Now, what I highlighted there was most of the legwork that has to be done in regards to prepping that LCD screen for the installation of the mod kit itself, or the backlight. Basically, all we did was remove that back polarizing / reflective film. Now, it is stuck on there really well, and it wasn't apparent in what I showed how hard that can be to remove. I would highly recommend, and what I found was easiest to do towards the end of actually peeling that film off, was to actually lay it on a flat surface, a non-scratch flat surface, maybe under like a cleaning cloth or something, and then take an EB Games card to start budging between the film and the glass itself. It's stuck on there really well, and it can be hard to get your fingers in between the film and that ribbon cable when you start to pass underneath that cable. You need to be really careful though. That screens, or the LCD screens on these Game Boys themselves, are very, very fragile. They're very easy to break. I've broken 2 in the past, and I'll tell you right now, there's nothing more disappointing than breaking one of these screens. So lay it on a flat surface if you're having issues, and get something like an old plastic card. I used my EB Games card to start budging in between the surfaces. But let's move on to the next step, which will actually be the installation of the backlight itself, which is going to involve a little bit of soldering and preparation of the kit. But let's have a look at that now. The actual installation of the backlight kit was actually pretty straightforward. It's just soldering the pads and hooking wires up to the screen or the backlight kit, and then pretty much installing the kit, the polarizing film behind the LCD and then dropping it into the Game Boy housing. And it was relatively hiccup free for me. I will note though that it's important to make sure that at this point in time, all of your surfaces are clean. So you wanna make sure that LCD is completely dust free. You wanna make sure you're peeling your films off and you're getting it all together quickly, because if you get any dust trapped between any of those layers, it's going to be like your mobile phone when you lay on a new screen protector. You're going to get bubbles. I don't know about you, but I don't want bubbles on my Game Boy screen. Before we move on though, one last little very important piece of information and something to remember is making sure that that polarizing film is oriented the correct way. There's a wrong and a right way to orientate these polarizing films. The easiest thing you can do to check the orientation is hold that film up to an LCD, and the angle or the orientation that allows light through is the orientation you want to have inserted into your Game Boy. So if this is the Game Boy in the upright position, the way you'd play it to hold, and this is the orientation of the film where the light passes through, that's how you want to overlap them. Very important, because if it's the incorrect orientation, you're not going to get an image on your screen when you power it on, and you won't be playing any games. To finish this build up though, we basically just need to hook the kit up to power and put everything back together. So let's do that, and then let's start playing some games and testing this kit out. Now, before we actually have a look at this kit in action and play some games and see how this kit performs in terms of its backlight, I want to wrap up my thoughts on this mod and installation itself. Now, I want to start with where I hooked the backlight up into power on the Game Boy board itself, down in the bottom right hand corner. Now, I watched a couple of other YouTubers and followed some other tutorials on how to install this kit, as you do, and they all went about installing it in the same manner, where they were hooking up to power, that is. However, there's been a lot of complaints regarding those points on the board, the same area on the board where the audio is drawing power, and people have been reporting that the LCD backlight will actually dim or flicker a little bit with the audio change. So for example, if you're playing Pokemon and the music's going, the backlight intensity will fluctuate with the music. Now, I went to Handheld Legend, where I bought this kit. On the purchase page for this LCD backlight kit, they have linked a video tutorial by another YouTuber. He hooks it up to the same points on the board where I hooked mine up, which admittedly, it works, it'll give the panel power, but it doesn't seem to be the best position to hook it up to power. Now, written on that same page where that YouTube video is also embedded, they have an alternative set of installation instructions, and they recommend you hook it up to a different point on the board. If I was to do another one of these installations, I would use the alternate points on the board, because while I haven't experienced any flickering on the backlight itself, I'm sure it's probably going to crop up somewhere. So if you're looking to do this kit yourself, I highly recommend following the written tutorial or set of instructions on the Handheld Legend website itself where you actually buy these backlight kits from, which I'll have linked down below in the description. Now, would I recommend anybody install this kit? It kind of depends. If you're a diehard who only plays on the OG Game Boys, being the DMG, the Game Boy Pocket, and you're unwilling to play these games on a Game Boy SP, which just has a backlight inbuilt, then yeah, this is pretty much your only option, or one of very few options. You need a frontlighter or backlighter. So this is the best option to backlight these older consoles. So if you're dead set on only playing on the older hardware because you're a purist that way, by all means, you can install this kit. I'm relatively inexperienced, as you can probably tell with soldering. I had almost no experience coming into this build with soldering, and I managed to get this kit installed relatively hiccup free. The only hiccup I think is worth noting, or problematic areas, is the actual removal of that back polarizing film that we covered at the start of this video. That is a massive pain in the butt, and it's the riskiest stage of this installation and mod. Peeling off that film puts a lot of pressure on that panel, the LCD, and they're very easy to break. And that ribbon cable at the back as well is also very delicate. The number one complaint, or the issue I see crop up with people attempting these builds or mods, is that they damage the LCD itself during that process, or they tear the ribbon cable. So that's something you need to keep in mind if you want to attempt this build, is that it comes with a lot of risk. And if you have a mint condition Game Boy, or a Game Boy Pocket, sorry, or an original Game Boy, it's probably maybe not worth running the risk on that particular Game Boy. Maybe go pick up a second-hand one off eBay that's maybe the condition isn't quite up to snuff, that you can at least have a practice run on, like I did. If you're a purist, absolutely. Give this kit a go, because if I can do it, you can do it. And that's the question we answered here today. Can a novice install a backlight kit? And yeah, pretty much. I think it's doable, very much doable, but it comes with its risk. So please remember that. But before we go, guys, let's actually have a look at this kit running and let's play some games. If you've enjoyed this video, guys, let me know down below in the comments. If you have any specific questions regarding this mod, also ask your questions down below. If you'd like to have a more lengthy discussion with me about retro gaming or Game Boys or this mod specifically, you can join the GameCast Discord. You'll find the link for that down below in the description box of this video. Please remember to check out the rest of the GameCast channel. There's a variety of content available and many other creators that are worth checking out. I hope you've enjoyed this video, guys. Until next time, have a good one.